I'm Jim Check. You're watching Now Media with me, Ian Burns, managing editor in the nation's capital. Kind of a cloudy or smoky day, hazy day here in the Okanagan. Doesn't look that bright there in the nation's capital either.
It's been raining. It's very grim.
So we've got lots to talk about today, but out of control immigration is kind of our theme. Out of control immigration benefits the few at the expense of the many, and that's kind of going to be the theme of today. Daniel Smith, Alberta's had enough and calls out the Liberals, and the Liberals call out their own. That one's interesting. Poilievre calls out the new carbon tax scheme. Canadian economy falters. Ford wants accountability. And of course, Joly, she's back in the news. And hypocrisy is okay for a Liberal senator. Why not? And when will safety return to our highways? Another horrible shooting in the U.S., and this time a stark difference in the way the media is framing it. There's quite the difference there. BC still selling that elbows up campaign here. Ravi Kahlon putting out a post there selling elbows up still when the Liberals have seemed to back down from it. All that and a lot more on The Really Big Show. We thank you for watching. Good turnout yesterday in The Really Big Show, and we hope you like, share. We're on every morning, 9 a.m. We're an independent media outlet here in Canada that does not have even close to the CBC's budget of $1.55 billion, and they're asking for more. Why not? I guess is the question. Why not? We're doing a lot more with a lot less. How's that?
But when your content is as good as CBC's, I mean, why wouldn't you want more money? They deserve something, don't they, as a reward for that?
Yeah, Daniel Smith. Let's kick it off. Daniel Smith. She's had enough, and she's definitely a little fired up here. Let's play this clip here from Daniel Smith.
Thinking about tonight is Ottawa over. Do you want to hear the answer? Ottawa overtaxing us. I mentioned that at the beginning of the evening. That our program costs are 70% of all tax dollars. We only collect 40%. Ottawa collects 60%, and then they use political means to transfer it. Alberta, year after year, has $20 to $25 billion that is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years. $600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province. You don't think we might be able to do a little bit more on social spending if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? You don't think we'd be able to cut taxes a bit if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? It is $5,000 per Albertan that every single year gets transferred out of this province for political reasons so that the Liberals can continue to spend it in places that vote Liberal. That is what is happening in the province and in the country.
Lots of people calling for Daniel Smith to run for the Prime Minister of Canada as well, but that was her being spicy there in a Lloydminster town hall there. Alberta getting the what you call the bad end of the stick, it seems like, for quite a long time, being treated by the Liberals like they have the plague, yet they willingly take their money and distribute to the provinces that won't allow them to run a pipeline to the East Coast.
Well, she didn't even mention that, did you? I mean, maybe she did later on, but that's like the kicker, isn't it? That all this happens, and then it's that party, the Liberal Party, and specifically that province, Quebec, that tends to limit the expansion of the golden goose, Canada's golden goose, which is the oil and gas industry. But I found this very, very interesting from almost like a sociological perspective or something like that. She's saying things here that are a little bit sort of crazy, I think. I'm not saying she's crazy, but it's crazy to see that this is where Canada is at now, where she's openly saying that the entire system is corrupt, that the tax system is corrupt, and it's based on patronage. It's based on political parties trying to dole out patronage. I mean, we've said this before, but obviously we're not elected officials. We're certainly not in charge of one of Canada's most important provinces. So I just find this interesting. It's a sign of the times, really, isn't it? Just how far along we are in this this episode, let's say. And this is, I have a feeling that the Liberals and a lot of people in Eastern Canada, they thought this was just going to go away. and it seems to be intensifying. It's getting worse and worse and worse, and it comes just before the list. We start to see a glimpse maybe of a couple of points on the list for infrastructure projects. I think it adds extra pressure to Carney to think of a way to give Alberta something so that it has a reason to hang around.
Even adding more to the taunting is when Yves Blanchette said that Quebec will always look after itself, and Alberta has the right to do that itself. And here it is, Danielle Smith speaking for Alberta. But many in the government-funded media have been calling her a traitor and many things, and like she ran on putting Alberta first, and she's doing it.
But the reality is, and again, like I don't want to repeat myself, we've said it so many times, the sort of contradiction at the heart of Canada, and this goes back before Canada even became a country, the contradiction is the fusion of Upper and Lower Canada, French Canada and English Canada. It's not a happy marriage, particularly, is it? And I think for a very long time, in the sort of second half of the 20th century at least, it's just been pretty much all Quebec's way, hasn't it? Everything's been gone for Quebec. And I think that's just become completely intolerable to a lot of people that aren't inside of the Quebec bubble. And I feel like this is like a reaction, isn't it? A delayed reaction to that frustration I think that a lot of people outside of Quebec feel about. It's not just that they get this extra money and they're subsidized for being less entrepreneurial, let's say, less, they structure their system in such a way that they earn less money. It's not just that, but it's also that they then go and try and stop projects from places like Alberta, who are like gung-ho and have the highest GDP per capita in the country.
Here's that list that Danielle Smith put out there for Mark Carney. And repeal Bill 69, lift the BC Bank tanker ban, scrap oil and gas emissions cap, end clean electricity regs, reverse plastics bans, cancel net zero car mandate, return carbon tax to provinces, guarantee energy corridors, no export tax on oil and gases, end equalization subsidies, stop energy censorship, fix Jasper and Banff mismanagement. Zero to date. Zero to date.
End equalization, that's not going to happen, is it? But it's like spinning plates, isn't it? You go over and you try and you make sure that the Quebec plate is spinning, and while you're doing that, the Alberta plate starts to fall. It's like you can't do it. It's like a magic show or something. And if you're not a very good magician, as maybe Carney isn't, you're not going to be able to keep this show going. But the trick is to try and give Alberta enough without antagonizing Quebec, isn't it? And it's a very strange way to run a country anyway, isn't it? It's very difficult.
Yeah, and this one, Tim Hodgson, the energy minister, actually came out quite vocal and criticizing Justin Trudeau. He even called the former Liberals incompetent. The funny thing is that most of those former Liberals are still there, and Mark Carney was the economic advisor for the incompetent Liberals.
I thought he was actually kind of soft. He was a bit, because he was asked a question directly about Trudeau by a journalist, saying something like, do you acknowledge that they were, that under Trudeau it was quite foolish to have turned down the Germans and all the rest of it? And he was very reluctant to go into that. Like, this man is not a politician by any stretch of the imagination. He's like, whereas Carney said he's not a politician, but he really is. This guy is actually being honest when he says he's not a politician. So he just kind of like said, no, can't do that. But I guess they've read between the lines here, and obviously, yeah, if you read between the lines, it does seem like a bit of an attack on Justin Trudeau.
The Toronto Sun ran a piece, their headline was, Carney's Liberals say Trudeau's Liberals were incompetent. But again, it's the same Liberals. Like, how many have changed?
Yeah.
And again, and then this piece here, from the energy minister, the piece here that the Trans Mountain Chief says pipeline capacity is sufficient till at least 2030. So again, what is this, another excuse to sit on our hands?
Well, this is a weird one, because this guy's come out and said, no, it's fine. What we really need to do is optimize the pipeline, which is kind of like putting all of this, it's like putting certain substances into the pipeline so that the oil moves faster and stuff like this. Seems quite sort of like quite complex, but he seems to think that that's a great idea and that's going to work. But then Big Timmy, he was asked pretty much straight away this question, and he just said, no, that's not a priority. And I guess if you think about that from a political perspective, if you come out with your magic list and number one is optimize the Trans Mountain, that's not really gonna
Appease
get
Alberta.
people excited. Yeah, it's not gonna gratify anybody, because the usual Green Coalition, there's certain people in Quebec, they'll all hate that, obviously, because it's got something to do with oil. They'll just automatically hate that. Then people in Alberta will say that's feeble, that's not enough. I think what they want monuments, don't they? They want something that they can point to and say, look, we built that. So yeah, this just seems to be. This is almost like a negotiation. One of those things that you see quite often, where they're kind of like negotiating in public, and they're giving the public a glimpse of the sort of things that they're discussing
Testing it
behind
out,
the scenes.
putting a flyer out there.
Yeah.
Our theme today is on immigration, and here's Pierre Poilievre. Let's listen to this clip on Pierre Poilievre on the immigration policies.
Our young people have a quarter-century high in their unemployment. Mark Carney this year is expected to bring in a record number of temporary foreign workers to take the jobs of Canadian youth, driving down our kids' wages and their ability to earn a living. So while he drives up the cost of housing, preventing them from owning homes, he drives down their wages by allowing greedy multinational corporations to bring in low-wage foreign workers that take away Canadian jobs, including in high unemployment regions of this country. Crime and chaos rage on our streets as every single catch-and-release liberal law remains in place, and Mark Carney has done nothing to stop it. And Mark Carney globetrots around the world, signing fake declarations that mean nothing and secure nothing for Canada, all while the United States and China are trampling all over Canada with tariffs. His weakness abroad is costing us at home.
It's an interesting angle to take, isn't it? I think he's got the same flu that I've got, young Pierre. But people were saying, and I mentioned that because people have been attacking him, saying that he's actually drunk or hungover or something. He's obviously got the flu, hasn't he? He's obviously sick. But no, it's an interesting angle because obviously young people, they don't really vote in particularly large numbers. So it's not like you're going to go out and win the youth vote and that'll win the election for you or something. But a lot of this story I found is parents who are worried about their kids, and obviously they do vote. So this could be this could be a vote winner if he plays it right.
Well, yeah, we got this other chart here. Payroll employment decreased by 32,000, well, almost 33,000 jobs in June. And you look at where the job losses are happening and where the job loss gains are in public administration, right? Like the private sector, including in British Columbia here, is collapsing. And then this immigration, and many people have said this immigration again is just to depress and suppress wages, and it's for the benefit of the few and the expense of the many. We've talked about it too. The expense of the many comes in the form of less healthcare access, increased housing costs, increasing inflation,
lower wages.
At lower wages. Well, some corporations make out like bandits in getting cheap wages. And then the other thing is that many of these we're going to talk about it later, colleges and universities, especially these lower tier ones, have been basically running their whole programs on immigration.
Yeah. Well, if you're in doubt, if you think that this is craziness and this is just like right-wing partisan nonsense or something like that, which is what a lot of people do seem to think, go and read the works of those famous right-wing reactionary fascists, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, where they discuss this at length in relation to English factory owners using Irish labour to bring the wages down. This has been going on forever. This used to go on read about the Roman Republic, how a lot of the wealthy magnates in Roman times brought in slaves, and a lot of the farmers there, a lot of the sort of citizens hated that because it undercut their quality of life. Because these people just use slaves, and then you suddenly you can't even have your own land, you can't work for a decent living. This has been going on. I'm sure this was going on in sort of like the ancient Near East and stuff like that in the time of Ur and all those city-states. This is just ancient. This is like something clearly embedded in the human psyche, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, there have been accusations from world organizations saying that, Canada needs to watch itself as it's basically getting close to running a modern day slavery ring. I mean, a lot of that stuff comes in, and then these people get abused as well. They get treated poorly, and especially the ones that are here illegally, like sexual trafficking, all kinds of things that have been pointed out. We've done tons of stories on, the federal government's investigated many cases on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things we've talked about it where like it doesn't seem to benefit anybody, but when you look a bit closer, there's a very small minority that benefits from it, and they happen to have a disproportionate amount of power. So they're kind of like pushing this onto all of us.
Yeah, and it was Tamoya Abotkata, I can't get his name right, a UN Special Rapporteur on contemporary forms of slavery, visited Canada on August 23rd to September 6, 2030. He described Canada's temporary foreign worker program as a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. And yet the Liberals, who said that they were going to reduce the temporary work permits, seem to have blown right past those targets here. Not even 6 months in, or 6 months in, they've blown past those targets. Yeah. And here's from an MP, Michelle Rimple-Gardner, posting this out here. Vancouver unemployment at 7.7, BC unemployment at 12%. Yet, there it is, Fatburger hiring a temporary foreign worker for $34 an hour. And then Tim Hortons, this is another one put out by Canada Proud. It's in the naming and shaming business, like Tim Hortons, that hire foreigners for entry-level jobs could easily done by young Canadians.
West Bank is listed there. See that? But I mean, there's places in you see New Brunswick there, and there are some really strange places here that do have quite high youth unemployment. But there are also places on that list that they're just like really rural, like Bracebridge, Ontario. Bracebridge, Ontario is that's like cottage country. It's not exactly, it's not a city or anything like that. It's not like a sort of densely populated area. Very strange that they would go out and seek that. I mean, there's got to be some local folk around there that need work.
The UN also, that special rapporteur said, he emphasized that employer-specific work permits leave these workers vulnerable. They're afraid to report abuse, and they're often trapped in exploitative conditions. And then we've seen this in the Okanagan. We've seen some charges laid. There was a story that we did for Fox Creek where they, I think they abused 3 or 4 immigrants there with not paying them, and it's just the ground is ripe for that. And again, it's these businesses that take advantage of this don't want to pay more, obviously, so they're screaming for more cheap labor. And many of the unions in Canada have started to speak out against it as well. Before, you weren't allowed to speak out, right? The media would go after you, attack you, and call you racist and a whole bunch of things, and like attack dogs, and it made people shy to speak out. But all of a sudden, it's got so bad, it's really hard to keep up the suppression of it.
Well, like we saw in that GDP per capita growth data yesterday, Canada's a strange outlier on the planet, really, in terms of its population growth exclusively from immigration. It's impossible to ignore at this point. Like I said ages ago when we were talking about it, the Canadian population has been growing at a faster rate than England's population grew during the Industrial Revolution. If you think about that, all that like Dickensian madness of orphans running around and like definite overpopulation, Canada's population has been growing faster than then. We're talking like 3% a year population growth exclusively from immigration. That is, it's an experiment, put it that way. It's a real, it's a novelty. And I think credit, in terms of like being able to talk about it, credit has to go to none other than Justin Trudeau. When he came out one day, randomly, certainly to my surprise, I feel like to everyone else's surprise, and started talking about like, those immigrants are taking our jobs and they're bringing your wages down. I was like, all right, Justin, that's a bit of a change of tune. But he started that. It was about 3 years ago now, and it's been basically open season ever since. But it's ridiculous, isn't it, that there was ever a kind of block on conversation about this? I mean, that is absurd.
And here's just another example, more layoffs. We've seen this in many of the universities and colleges that they're laying off as in international enrollment plummets. So yeah, that was basically their scheme, their business model was take advantage of immigration.
Well, yeah, sell in reality sell something that you don't own, which is a visa, access to Canada, life in Canada, and the opportunity to settle in Canada, but then pretend that what you're really selling is a world-class education in how to make pies or something. I mean,
Yeah,
it was an obvious scam. It was classic sort of, I'll keep the profits, and you'll take care of the losses kind of thing.
It fits our theme for today. It benefits the few at the expense of the many. Again, when we talk about increased crime, access to health care, inflation, skyrocketing rent costs, all those things Canadians have faced here, and then jobs, like pressure to keep wages low, and then our youth population, and like unemployment rates at 20% in the Ontario, and that. And this is a big story that is starting to get some traction, but it's been around for a while, because you and I talked about this, Scott. It's got to be about 4 or 5 months ago on this show. That clean fuel regulation will add 17 cents a liter. Pierre Poilievre now coming out and calling it the second version of this carbon tax, and he wants it repealed because it's going to add 17 cents a liter by 2030. And he says we need to make it a priority right now to get down. It's just another tax, right? And I wouldn't be surprised. This is just a thought, because BC has a big hole in its budget, and they lost the ability for the carbon tax, which created a bigger hole in their budget, that they wouldn't try to copy something like this as well.
Yeah, they don't want to lose revenue, do they? Certainly not at this time, where it's starting to look fiscally quite sort of desperate, isn't it? But also, do you want to give your sort of arch nemesis, Pierre Poilievre, the opportunity to get out the axe the tax banners, dust those off, and start that again? Because that was so successful, and it was one of the main reasons that Justin Trudeau ended up falling on his sword.
Yeah, the Liberals, the NDP, and the media lied for how long about how it didn't affect inflation. Yet when it was like a precipitous drop right as soon as they pulled that carbon tax off, right? And and then they're just like, well, maybe it's and then they started taking credit for it. We took the carbon tax off. Look what we did.
Well, I guess it's true though, isn't it? It is factually accurate to say that they removed it, but that ignores the context of, they were forced to do it by a relentless campaign by this chap, Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah. And then here we go with the CERB thing, when they were just doling out the cash. They were just doling it out. This is from Holly Dolan Blackwell's write-offs under the most popular pandemic relief program. And this is where all kinds of people just cashed in on this. Near $34 million. That's the write-offs. That's not the amount they doled out, and that's that $2,000 a month check. The government was fully aware of the risk. Managers wrote an early report to the Senate Finance Committee. The approach was balanced by a risk-based integrity framework. So yeah, new figures disclosed yesterday by the Department of Employment and Canada Revenue said a total of over 9 million Canadians applied for the relief checks. The national workforce at February 2020, just prior to the outbreak, pandemic, was 19.1 million. A total of $74 billion are paid to applicants who claim to be jobless. $74 billion. To date, $5.4 billion has been clawed back from the ineligible claimants. $5.4 billion ineligible. Another 33 million has been written off as unrecoverable. Millions were lost. Imagine that, eh?
So much money was spent during COVID, wasn't it? I feel like it's almost too frightening to look at the books from those days.
Blacklock's doing their job, embarrassing the government as usual, and they get accused of yellow journalism. Imagine that, eh?
Because they're a thorn in their side, aren't they? That's obviously the reason. I mean, we've discussed it before, but they just don't like this level of scrutiny. It's pretty meticulous, and it's relentless, isn't it?
And the program also paid out $635 million to 317,000 high schoolers nationwide. Why not? Payments included a total of 40,000 claims by grade 9 students. Hey?
Talk about Dickensian. What were they doing? Were they working in the mines?
And almost 93,000 grade 10 students and 184,000 claims by grade 11 applicants. So somebody got the word out to the high school students that you can get yourself. They probably made nowhere near that kind of money, and all of a sudden they were looking for job replacements. I mean, they should get it now because the students have been unemployed for how long? We got 20% unemployment rate in some provinces.
Yeah, we need serve for kids.
Here's Mark Carney. He was, he's talking about the military here. Let's have a listen to him.
In Kyiv on Sunday, I recalled decades ago when President Ronald Reagan led a peace effort with the Russians, he adopted the slogan, trust but verify. But Vladimir Putin is not Mikhail Gorbachev. Putin seeks darkness, not glasnost. He seeks empire, not perestroika. We can't trust but verify with Putin. We must deter and fortify. Deter new aggression and fortify our shared defense. And that's why yesterday the minister and I announced the extension of Canada's Operation Reassurance for another 3 years. This renewal will increase capabilities in Latvia to reinforce our collective defense and to bolster our cooperative security and strengthen that NATO deterrence. The extension of Operation Reassurance is part of our broader mission to rebuild, rearm, and reinvest in the Canadian Armed Forces. And we're working with urgency and determination to increase our defense capabilities to meet the threats that are growing in the world. Because if we're going to deter Russian aggression in Latvia and the Baltics across Europe, if we're going to secure a lasting and more durable peace and security, if we're going to defend and advance our values of freedom, of democracy and peace, Canada must do so from a position of strength. In short, if we want a safer world, we need a stronger Canada.
He could have just started with that at the end. The wind was not his friend there. I mean, lost his place a few times, but again,
I'm surprised he didn't have those, you know, the little glass window things. You know, they seem to be
prompters.
A lot better than paper.
We don't have the budget for that.
Yeah, I guess not. But
we spent it all. We spent it all, you know, elsewhere in a bunch of other schemes.
Yeah, I was watching that, and I don't know. It just seems there's nothing new in there in that speech, particularly. He's just talking about it's this. We've heard a lot of this, haven't we, about trying to resist Russia and all that. I don't really know what he's trying to.
It's more
what
meat
message he's trying to put out there.
More meat for his base, the ones that, you know, like really buy into the elbows up stuff and you know, like this fear.
Maybe
fear. I mean, the Liberals are really good at driving fear. They did it in COVID. They did it with Trump. They're doing it now with Russia. You know, it's all where they can identify a boogeyman. It gets their base fired up, and they don't have to.
It also makes them look strong, I guess, doesn't it? Politicians love to do this, where they use soldiers and tanks as props behind them, and they stand there, and it's like, I'm the boss man. So maybe he wanted to get one of those press conferences in there, but he didn't really say anything new. I mean, he was comparing Putin to Gorbachev and stuff like that. I don't know. It just seems a little bit wasteful. The speechwriter just seems to have wasted his time on that, because it's like we all know that Putin is a bit of a monster and all that, but it's kind of what's new? What are you talking about? I mean, I suppose there's this Latvia thing, but that was already sent out in advance, so it wasn't particularly edifying.
Here's Melanie Joly being not fact-checked on CBC. She just goes off and says a whole bunch of things that, yeah, let's play it.
In Europe, the Prime Minister has been in Europe, and we heard from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who has been, you know, maybe not a huge surprise, but a bit critical of what's been signed over the last few days with the Prime Minister in particular. And he says that the one deal with Germany on critical minerals is a phony declaration that is unenforceable with no money attached, and he's coming home with nothing of consequence. What's your defense of the government's agenda over there in Europe? What do you say to Mr. Poilievre?
I think Mr. Poilievre needs to look at himself in the mirror. when he's describing what you just said, I think he's talking about his own policy.
Why do you say that?
Because ultimately, he, as the opposition leader, has been talking a lot, but with no action. Never did we hear him that we should get to 3.5% of defense budget. Never did we hear him talking about the fact that our armed forces should get a pay raise in order to recruit better and to make sure that we could support our strong men and women. Never did we hear that we should increase defense procurement to make sure that we build more in Canada. Never did we hear from him neither the fact that ultimately we need to be less reliant on the US to become closer to Europe, and that's exactly what we are doing. And never did we hear him about also everything that is linked to our airspace sector and F-35s. So I could go on and on and on, but I think we have not a lot of time for this interview.
Did you hear the little simper at the end there? He's loving it, wasn't he?
The two things, if I got to sit in that guy's chair and get access to Melanie Joly, which we, would love to get access, is she didn't answer the question at all. Like, what did you get out of Europe? She just deflects with this, and then it's just a bunch of lies as well. And he doesn't fact check her once, right? Raquel Dancho there, the MP, fact checks her. You can go on Twitter and fact checks her on all those things. And, Pierre's been, calling out for more attention to the military for a long time. So, she just says whatever she says, doesn't get fact checked, doesn't answer the question either. Does not answer the question, what did we get out of Europe? What is it other than, an intent to kind of look at doing more things with them?
It's the usual thing with Melanie Joly, because I watched that whole interview, and he asked her quite a lot of questions. I mean, he starts off the interview by saying, "What's going on with the trade deal?" And she just says something that she said a lot of times, which is, "I know you journalists want to know this, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to give you anything." She does that every time. I think it's a completely futile exercise to interview this woman. She never provides new information.
What it does for us, though, is we do have the fool of the day, and she's
she makes it. It's too easy. It's too easy for us, really, isn't it? But I would say about this Raquel Dancho, if you read her claim fact thing, her little fact checking, there's quite a few non sequiturs in there, where she says claim, we didn't hear him talk about pay rises. Fact, Pierre talked about how the money will go to the front lines in recruitment to fill many vacancies. That's not the same thing. That's not saying a pay rise. And there's a couple of those. So, this entire mini episode is pretty sort of sordid and unedifying, I think. And it's just, they're both just wasting time, including the Conservative there, who I do have a feeling, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm certain about it, but I do have a feeling that Poilievre did actually say that soldiers should earn more money. But she hasn't found that quote. She hasn't found that evidence. But I seem to remember that he did.
I do. Yeah.
But she hasn't pointed to that, which is that's just incompetence, really, isn't it, on her part? But, I mean, we all know that the front lines of the Conservative Party are incompetent, except for Pierre Poilievre.
I mean, the bigger thing is, this CBC reporter doesn't ask, for her proof on any of that stuff, and doesn't answer the question. Does not answer the question. He could say, oh, that's great and everything, whenever you're making these allegations. But what about answering the question? Europe, what did we get? What did we actually get that's tangible? No. Nothing.
Yeah, indeed. But I mean, we're used to seeing that kind of fact checking when it's somebody boisterous and antagonistic like Pierre Poilievre being interviewed. Then there's a lot of pushback, isn't there?
Oh, they got a team in the background fact checking.
Yeah, like live on air fact check. But yeah, I don't know what it is with Melanie Joly. I mean, I'm sort of, I don't know why she has that job. I don't know why I know her name. Why do any of us know who she is? I don't understand it. I really, truly don't understand. She doesn't seem to bring anything to the table, particularly. And whenever she's interviewed, it's the same thing over and over again. She almost has contempt for journalists, I find. She just never wants to say anything.
Well, they don't seem to call her
at least
out,
even Mark Carney will say something, He will occasionally let something slip, and it's like you can get a headline out of it or something. With Melanie Joly, it's just nothing. She never says anything.
Doug Ford continues his call for now. He wants not just only the Ontario government workers, he wants the federal government to bring back workers to the office 5 days a week. Good luck with that one, Doug.
It's quite a funny comment there from this Twitter account, isn't it? The next one, I mean. About deli sliders. As if that's going to fix the Canadian economy.
Yeah, so it just shows Ontario's living standards continue to fall below the rest of Canada's, and that's from the Fraser Institute. And meanwhile, Doug Ford's vision is to get people back to work, and he, like you said, $5 deli sliders won't solve this massive capital outflow. But
it's not going to solve much, is it? It's not going to solve anything at all, but I think it's going to appease. There's a group of there's a kind of constituency, I suppose, in the political world that wants this to happen urgently, and I guess it is sandwich salesmen. But I don't think it's going to fix much. I think they'll be quite disappointed.
All that stuff, like the downtowns are hollowed out in many of those places, especially in the big government towns like Ottawa, and when there's big. It's the big government towns that are really suffering from, like their downtowns being hollowed out. And, of course, the workers don't want to go back to the office because then, like somebody's watching them when they're watching Netflix. And
yeah, well, a lot of them talk about how it affects their productivity. Yeah, it makes them less productive.
I mean, there's an argument to be made.
In the office.
You spend 2 hours on especially those busy roads, 2 hours either way sometimes, right? So it kind of like it's frustrating. You spend half your day or half the work day just driving back and forth to work. I mean, there's got to be a way to make it work. I'm not sure what it is, though. But you spread government offices all across the nation, because if the argument is you don't need to be in the office, why do they all need to live in Ottawa? Why do the government workers need to all live in Ottawa? Well, I guess because
once a month, there might be a meeting once a month. Therefore, you must be located in Ottawa.
And then this is we've put this chart up here, but again, it just shows you how the money is fleeing Canada here, and this is red there for the first time in 35 years. Net divestment crisis here going on here in Canada, and that includes Mark Carney personal assets, and Brookfield is in that red bar.
It's quite an ugly. We've seen this already, haven't we? This graph. Yeah. It's very, very ugly. It's not. This doesn't induce happiness, does it?
And from Holly Dona Black Lux here, a Liberal Senate appointee who denounced Conservatives' critics as cold-blooded on climate change jetted home each weekend to Winnipeg for no official reason, account show. Senator Charles Adler out of Manitoba had called global warming the leading issue of our time, but yesterday had no comment. He'd like to go home every weekend. Accounts show Adler billed for repeated round trips 13 in 14 weeks to spend weekends in his Winnipeg home. He's probably one of the few people that wants to go to Winnipeg all the time. I used to fly into Winnipeg every couple of weeks, and it wasn't my choice of where to go there. But the senator typically left Ottawa on Thursdays, returned to Ottawa on Mondays or Tuesdays to take a seat in the Senate. He did not reply when public businesses required his regular attendance in Winnipeg each weekend when the Senate was in session. His travel expenses for the 13 weeks, ready? A measly $42,960 that you as a taxpayer get to pick up. But climate change, again, he called the Conservatives cold-blooded for not recognizing climate change. But again, typical hypocrisy. It applies, those rules apply to the plebs and not to the elite.
130,000 kilograms of carbon is what the carbon emissions is what Blacklocks reckons here, using the International Civil Aviation Organization's calculator. That's considerable, isn't it? You would think, obviously Ottawa and Winnipeg are very far away, aren't they? And you're not going to drive that. You're not going to cycle that, are you? And if you want to go home, you're going to have to fly. But the only point to be made really is the hypocrisy point, isn't it? It's like if this is the greatest crisis in the history of the world and you're very excited about it and it's like the thing that you think about all the time, then you just wouldn't do this. You wouldn't do it. That's the truth.
The plastic, he talks about plastic straws later too, right? But he says he likes plastic straws, but if you say to me, do you really want all the stuff floating around the ocean, or do you want to do something about it? He said, I'd surrender the plastic straws. But even the hostesses now, like when when they, they say, "Do you want a straw?" And I'm saying, "There's a paper straw," and I'm thinking, "No, thanks. I've had enough glue for the day. I'm over my," because paper straws are use glue to hold it together, and like they typically say, "Yeah, I wouldn't drink from it either." And they don't last either. Like the paper straw lasts.
That's the problem.
Like 30 seconds in your glass.
If they worked, if they actually had a function on this earth, then I would use them and enjoy using them, but they just don't. They just don't work.
Well,
you're better off with those metal ones, but then the problem with those metal ones is that sometimes you forget it's metal and you kind of hit your teeth, don't you? It's probably not good for your teeth.
Or also, not cleaning them very well, and you got a lot of bacteria.
Yeah.
You don't want to be throwing those away. You're better off not to use a straw if they don't if they're offering you a paper straw. But the other thing is, like, all these people that drink out of these paper cups, they think they're paper. There's a plastic lining in those cups, right? There's a plastic lining, and the plastic is melting into the coffee or other hot liquid, tea, coffee, melting, being dissolved. Because if you leave that cup sit there for long enough, it'll actually start to collapse, because paper itself won't hold a liquid for very long. And so you're drinking plastic, and everybody's so worried about microplastics, and yet they're willing to drink out of these paper cups all the time with, the nice logo on the front. They're paying $10 for this fancy drink that's actually melting plastic into their insides. Why not?
Yeah, mixed in with the sugar there.
Get yourself a shot of sugar and a little bit of plastic, and off you go.
Sugar and microplastics, please.
Here's Franco Terresno from the Canadian Taxpayers. He says that that this report should be a huge wake-up call. And let's play the clip here on bureaucracy costs.
A new report should be a huge wake-up call for politicians. It's time to rein in the out-of-control federal bureaucracy. A new report published just by the Parliamentary Budget Officer shows the federal bureaucracy cost taxpayers like you $71 billion last year. Okay, the bureaucracy cost taxpayers about $40 billion in 2016. That means the cost of the federal bureaucracy went up 77% in a decade. Now ask yourself, are you getting 77% better services from the federal government? I think the answer to that is a clear no. But it gets worse, folks, because the PBO...
Oh, you can keep playing that. Sorry, it gets worse. Let's hear that.
...is warning that if spending isn't coming under control, things will keep getting out of hand, okay? So the PBO projects that the cost of bureaucracy could continue to increase to about $76 billion by 2029. And not just that, folks. Listen to how outrageous the compensation is that you're paying for the federal bureaucrats, okay? Quote, overall compensation for a full-time federal employee is projected to reach over $172,000 by 2029.
That's enough. Yeah. And the soldier that they gave the raise to, I think a 20% raise, that was making $40 grand a year.
Yeah.
Will now make $48,000 for his crawling in the ditch, living in foreign lands and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, the bureaucrats that are in Ottawa there watching Netflix and not going into the office only 3 days a week are going to make $172 on average. And it's $172,000. But let's not forget one of the best ones, the Sky Canada, the head of Sky Canada, just under $400,000 a year. And then she's got 7 staff members to stare out the window and look for aliens as well.
I would say, just in the interests of being factual here, it seems like they've been a bit cheeky, haven't they? They've not mentioned the phenomenon of inflation, which makes that look a little bit more dramatic than it really is. But there is no doubt, and what they maybe could have focused on is that there's no doubt that the proportion of public sector jobs to private sector jobs has increased, hasn't it, under Trudeau and now Carney.
You got a lot of voters there.
Indeed, yeah. And I mean, Danielle Smith's saying it as well. So it's like it's hardly a secret anymore that a lot of the government expenditure is actually a form of patronage, a form of rewarding your supporters.
Franco comes across almost like a guy screaming on a corner in that one, but in this next one here, Franco, I think, is a lot more measured and a lot more. This one should anger Canadians a lot more if we listen to this one here. Listen in on what Franco has to say about bonuses.
Bonus have cost Canadians more than $1.5 billion since 2015. Now, number one, why is the government handing out bonuses? Like, this is not the private sector. Why are you handing out bonuses? Number two, in what world is an organization that is $1 trillion in debt think it has any money lying around for bonuses? But then the government is handing out bonuses for clear failure. Okay, we all remember Arrive scam, right? It initially launched for 80 grand. Then the simple app blew up to a tab of about 60 million. Well, government executives working on Arrive scam took $340,000 in bonuses. Or the Bank of Canada. It has one job: keep inflation low and around 2%. Well, when inflation reached a 40-year high and Canadians couldn't afford groceries, the Bank of Canada printed up $20 million in bonus checks. Or how about the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation? Okay, another Crown corporation has said many times, you know, it's to an effect of like, oh, we have one objective overall: housing affordability for all. Okay, well, since 2020, they've handed out more than $100 million in bonuses, and we've been struggling with a housing affordability crisis. Makes no sense.
You would think, you know, Tiff Macklin deserves to get fired, and they doled out $20 million in bonuses.
I mean, it is a quite a good point that he makes, isn't it? About
and the Canadian
the
mortgage
trade-off
housing
between public sector and private sector is supposed to be public sector's stable, you know, easier, but then you won't get a bonus and you won't get higher salaries. Whereas private sector is supposed to be a bit more like unstable, but you're in for bonuses if you perform well.
And you wonder why these institutions and the CBC protect the Liberals.
Yeah.
Because the kitty's wide open. Like, it's money for everybody, except the taxpayer. Again, the benefit
it's a lot of rewarding of their own base, for sure. Yeah. And it's very much in a financial way.
The few benefit at the expense of the many, again. And here's this, we did this story here. You can go on Corner now and read it. It was from this Wealthsimple thing. You can travel from BC to Halifax to buy a car and cost all your hotel rooms and all your gas and everything and get all the way back, there and back, and still have $4,000 to the good. Not bad, hey? If you flew there, it would be even cheaper, but you've got a little map here that kind of shows you the similar type vehicle in British Columbia. The second highest in Canada here at $37,275 for that vehicle. And
you can also have a vacation.
Is that the highest?
You can have a nice time in the Maritimes.
That is the highest, actually, in British Columbia. BC owns that. And you can go across to Halifax there, and that you can get it for $29,000, $28,000. Crazy.
Doesn't list the territories, though, where they can be extraordinarily expensive, can't they, in the territories?
And then we've talked about this for a while, and we've highlighted many stories on trucker safety, and we've done tons and tons of stories. And here's another example. This happened on the number 1 highway there at the snow shed there between Revelstoke and Golden, and that's in the you know, like the summit there. And these are some of the snow sheds. And this is a tractor trailer that hit the snow shed. And, you know, the highway was closed for 8 hours, and there's a lot of anger over that as well. And it struck the McDonald's snow shed. You know, if you drive through those snow sheds, you'll notice each one has a name. Most people don't know it. Just as you're entering the snow shed, there's a name above it.
Great Bear.
And it also ended up, after it hit the snow shed, then it ended up in the other lane, and it hit an oncoming SUV as well. That's a good thing. The speed limits in those sheds is fairly low. Otherwise, this thing could have been a deadly accident as well. Police said occupants in both vehicles suffered only minor injuries, and it looks like the snow shed took the brunt of the hit there. But this Corey Morgan, a journalist there, he said he spent 8 hours parked on the Trans-Canada along with thousands of other motorists due to the semi that crashed at Rogers Pass. And then he said that there was little notification. You get trapped out there, and I've been trapped there too. There's no ways around these things. Obviously, you're in a mountain pass, and to turn around is tough as well. And so you're basically stuck there. I've been stuck in Golden, which was not bad because you actually go into a restaurant and wait, right? But trucker
nice
safety
tourist experience.
There has to be more done with trucker safety, and we're working on a story here. We're trying to talk to people, and here's another example of trucks making bad decisions here. This is a truck going the wrong way on a bridge. There, he should be on the other lane there on the bridge. And then this is another picture of a truck that went off the road, and then and again, CBC actually was the one that did that undercover operation in Ontario there, where they went and tried to get their license, and basically you could buy your license in Ontario. It's supposed to be $10,000 and plus all these hours and that. And so, oh no, there's shortcuts. There's obviously shortcuts that you can take, right, to get your license faster. Just what we need. These people driving 50-ton vehicles with shortcuts. And the other big problem when we talk about out-of-control immigration is some of the crime that's been happening too. And this happened in Mississauga, a kidnapping attempt allegedly. They've been released with an ankle monitor. Police say a 26-year-old already on probation, banned from owning guns, was arrested after he and two others tried to abduct 2 young women. And he was released. Why not?
Is this guy, does it say he's actually from overseas? Because that'd obviously be a question, and deportation would be a question then, wouldn't it, if he is non-Canadian?
And then this one here from Tommy Robinson. You know Tommy Robinson, UK guy.
He's been around a while, yeah, I certainly know of him. And
then this is I didn't put the video in here. Migrant tried snatching a 6-year-old child and get them in his car in Dublin today, and he's been surrounded by a bunch of English people, English flag wearers, I guess, and they were going at him there. But
it says Dublin, doesn't it? You wouldn't find many English flags in Dublin.
Oh, right. Sorry. There you go. I got confused with the
Tommy
Union Jack under Tommy's there. What's that?
Yeah. With Tommy Robinson, you never know. Sometimes what he's saying is actually legit. Sometimes he's got the wrong end of the stick, but he just posts it anyways. He's been caught out a number of times. He actually lost the defamation case because he did something where he hadn't got the whole story yet. So I would say treat it, take it with a pinch of salt. It might be right, but you don't really know with Big Tommy.
And then here's another one on highway safety. Mom's Lambo impounded after a young man caught speeding on Highway 3. 130 in an 80-kilometer zone just south of Princeton. And turns out he said it's his mom's car. This is what he got. $368 ticket. A car impounded, of course, and then $109 for the ticket, license plate violation, and what
was the license plate violation? Does it explain?
Probably no plate on the front. That they don't typically put plates on. And then it's no wonder it's under his mom's name, likely, because he's got high-risk driver premiums now. So that's likely why his mom drives a Lambo.
Yeah, it's probably a kind of insurance game in the insurance system a bit there. Yeah.
His mom drives a Lambo.
Unless she's just a really cool middle-aged woman. Yeah.
Here's Ravi Kahlon. He's still selling the elbows up here. We're going to play a clip from Ravi.
The Prime Minister and Premier Eby's been very clear with them, is that we have to do the things at home to strengthen our economy, to strengthen, remove barriers from interprovincial trade, do the things at home that gives us more strength at the negotiating table, especially as we go to renegotiate CUSMA. And, some would argue that the discussions have already started, but really that comes up next year, and that's the big one.
Does BC have any intention of following suit by removing its own retaliatory measures? For instance, will BC be removing the ban on U.S. alcohol sales? And what happens if the Prime Minister actually requests you to do that?
Well, our elbows are not going down on this. We have maintained our position that we will keep the U.S. alcohol off of our shelves, and we know it's having an impact in the U.S. We're hearing from governors across the U.S. talking about how big of an impact that is having on them. But, the truth is, Jason, we don't want to be here. We don't want to be having a trade war with the U.S. We want an agreement. That's why we're giving the federal government some space. We want an agreement. We want the softwood lumber tariffs or duties to be part of an agreement. And if we get that, of course, we'll consider removing the alcohol barrier, but not at this stage.
I'm sure that's what the Americans are worried about, the alcohol sales.
I think they are a little bit upset about it, but they're such a small minority that they're not going to change Trump's mind, are they? So, like, just because there's not much bourbon being sold in Vancouver or something like that. But just in general, it gives me the impression that he's got like last month's script, hasn't he? He hasn't been sent the new script yet, and he's reading the old lines.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about Ravi Kahlon challenging David Eby for the premier's job as well. But here's Harman Bangu, a Conservative MLA we've interviewed before. He says, David Eby lectures BC on keeping our elbows up while ignoring the fact that our LNG heads south to the U.S., who are profiting massively. He blocks tanker exports that could benefit our coastal economy. Does he really think British Columbians won't see the double standard? BC drills it, Trump ships it, Europe pays the price, and we get nothing. So, yeah, I mean, that was what we talked about the other day, where Polish ambassador highlighted that he actually laughed and said that, like, we buy the LNG from your LNG, we buy it from the Americans that have marked it up. I mean, it's like a world joke. It's like yeah. The world recognizes how stupid we've been, and yet our elbows up politicians seem to be sticking to the same script. They ignore it.
What amazes me when I see things like this, and like on this subject, like, why the hell are the Americans complaining about Canada? They get such a great deal, and this is just one example of it. Because if you look at the trade relationship between Canada and the US, this would go down as a part of the American deficit, wouldn't it? Because they're buying the gas, even though they then sell it on and make a profit from it. So it's like they just have such a glorious arrangement with Canada, where they just get to like make a mockery of Canada and make so much money off the back of Canadian, improvidence, let's say, and still they whine.
Here's a liquor store that, Ravi Kahlon says he's not going to put any liquor on there, but why you want to put it on there anyway? Doug Ford's talking about this here. Let's play this clip here where you just go into the liquor store and take what you need.
Did you see these characters on the news last night that went into the LCBO up in Kitchener? They're brazen bunch of crooks. I have all the confidence in the world in the Waterloo Police Services, the chief, he's a champion, the chief. We got to catch these guys and throw them in jail. They just do not care. They go in there, they start loading up. And you know what's ironic? It's the taxpayers' money, the LCBO. And so they're stealing off the taxpayers. But I have confidence they're going to be caught, and the judges have to keep these guys in bail.
Yeah, sure. I mean, how can you not catch them? They're pretty much identified there in the video clip. And you know what's going to happen? Nothing.
Yeah, they look like patriots at least. Had the Canada flag on his cap there, one of them. So he's got elbows up.
I did
would say here, I would just say about Doug Ford here, like, what are you? Are you a newspaper columnist? Are you a YouTuber? What are you? Or are you in charge of Canada's most important province? Like, are you actually a man that has power? Do something about it.
Yeah,
But instead, he's got his little print-offs.
Sure.
It's the same old thing with Doug Ford. He reminds me a bit of Boris Johnson. We've compared him to Trump, but I think I think the better comparison is maybe Boris Johnson, who was classic for that. He would talk about things being an injustice and all the rest of it, and then he would be in power and do nothing about it. It's just, at some point, that act wears thin, doesn't it?
I watched another one where a citizen was in the liquor store where they were like doing the same thing here. And he tried to stop them in the store. People just stop, no, let him go. And I know that I had a friend that tried to stop, like that as well. It's not worth it really, because, they don't know if they have a knife, a gun, or whatever, right? And it's the police's job and the court's job and our immigration policy's job. All those things that needs to happen because crime is out of control. So much is out of control. And again, even like we talked about the Mississauga one, they tried to abduct 2 women, yet they just got released and they got an ankle bracelet out of it.
But I think it really is about punishments, isn't it? And that can be passed as law, can't it? That's where it boils down to. You can blame the
it.
judges all you like, but I mean, if you put in a minimum sentence requirement or something for theft of whatever, that would go down as theft under $5,000, wouldn't it? That would be the charge.
It'd be nothing.
Just make sure
shoplifting.
make sure that for that, if you're found guilty of that offence, then you get a minimum jail time of whatever. But the thing is, they're worried about not being able to afford the prison system and not having enough spots for prisoners and things. It's just the whole thing is quite calamitous, isn't it?
It's coming right up here. We're going to talk about it again, where you got to change the consequences. But Sean Fraser, who we've interviewed before, he used to be the Liberal housing minister. He was also the immigration minister. He made a mess out of immigration, and then he was the housing minister and made a mess out of that. So why not give him the justice ministry? Why not give him that? And so they're talking about, here he is with a photo op, because he's meeting with Pam Bondi there in Washington, of course. And they discussed, like the fentanyls are, which we talked about yesterday, who said himself that he has no authority.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know if Rommel can zoom in now, if people can see, but it's very funny that he's chosen to post that particular image where he's holding the pen.
Yeah, where he's
holding the pen like that. I mean, anybody that's read even a few sentences of Sigmund Freud knows about phallic symbolism and things like that. It's like he's trying to make himself look strong and powerful with his pen, while Pam Bondi just sits there.
I'm sure it's Pam Bondi's next sentence after this photo was like, "You put that pen down, or I'll put it down for you."
Yeah, I was just like, "Are you going to use that pen? Like, you're not writing anything down."
The fentanyl czar again.
I should get a pen out, shouldn't I?
The fentanyl czar, who said yesterday that he has no authority. He's been given no authority over the police. That fentanyl czar that he's so proud of right here.
So much of politics is just words, isn't it? I mean, we bemoaned Dougie Ford there, but he's doing what so many people are doing. It's just theatre, and that fentanyl czar thing is just pure theatre, isn't it?
It's just plain garbage. And then tragedy in the United States, and this is from Secretary Kristi Noem, confirmation that the shooter at the Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis was a 23-year-old man claiming to be transgender, and then 2 children were killed in that. And then there's a lot of media reaction on this as well. Pierre Poilievre put out his tweet there. Heartbroken by the senseless violence that seriously injured and took the lives of innocent children at a Catholic school. And then people calling out Carney for not identifying that it was a Catholic school. And then a Catholic school, Catholic church was set on fire here. I don't know if it's related or not, but
Carney is a Catholic as well. I mean, and as is Pierre Poilievre. But I suppose it is quite interesting because, when this kind of thing happens and other religions or minority groups are targeted, usually there's some expression of solidarity with that group, isn't there, with that community? But
I believe
I don't know. Maybe Carney might send out another tweet later on where he acknowledges that. But that is quite an important absence, I think, or it's striking anyway.
I believe we have Renee calling in because we're ready to do the show here with Renee. I don't know if we want to bring her in here, but do you want to bring Renee in for the rest of this, or?
It's up to you, man. I don't know. Would she like to do our US section here? Maybe. I guess it's up to her.
Yeah, you see if you can. I don't know if we have room on the screen though. That's the question here. Can you just let her know?
Relegate me to tiny square.
We're just a few minutes, and then we'll be there with Renee. How's that? We're going to try and go fast on the rest of this stuff. Then we're not going to play all these clips here. We're going to leave that school shooting thing. There's lots there on the thing. We'll leave that, and then there's not a lot here. Like this distracted driving. We're going to play that clip, but we'll just cover the memes here, and then we'll leave it at that. There's this meme here. Watch for potholes, sinkholes, and that was way down there. I don't know if
Is that Gavin Newsom? Yeah, I did say.
Yeah. But yeah, there you go. We'll leave it at that for today because I do have Renee in for 10 o'clock here for Beyond the Ballot. So we'll leave it at that. And If you're interested, you can jump right back in. We're going to end this one right now. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with the Really Big Show. And right now we're going to skip to Beyond the Ballot. Thank you for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.